Not every crime leaves fingerprints. Some are born in code. Welcome to truecrime.exe, where fiction feels far too real. Good evening. Tonight, we're diving into 5 true crime stories that shocked countries around the world. We'll go in order: Brazil, Iceland, Ireland, Czech Republic, Tokyo. Before we begin, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? I love seeing the map light up. Headphones on, lights low. If you enjoy this, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Make yourself comfortable. Case 1 starts now.
At 6:14 a.m., the sky above Rio de Janeiro was a pewter plate, and the ocean looked hammered flat. Mariana Alves, 24 years old, posted a selfie from the summit cross of Pedra da Gávea. Wind-fanned hair, a grin that said she'd beaten the sun. The caption read, "Sempre mais alto," always higher. By 7:03, her phone went dark. By 7:20, the first hikers to arrive found a torn energy bar wrapper and a tripod leg wedged between stones. No Mariana, no pack, no sound but wind. The climb. Mariana built an audience of 380,000 with sunrise hikes, minimalist gear guides, and those crisp 10-second reels where a body becomes a dot against impossible views. She trained alone, but sometimes she collaborated, most often with Renata Cruz, a climber with half her following and an appetite for drama that did numbers. 2 days before Mariana vanished, Renata posted a reel that called out fake peaks. The comment section detonated. By dawn, the two had unfollowed each other. The official timeline was clean. Toll Plaza 4:38, Trailhead 5:11, Summit approximately 6:10. A drone hobbyist practicing orbits along the mountain's face at 6:32 caught a dark blunt shape near the summit ledge. Most viewers saw a shadow. A pause and scrub revealed a second tripod and something small and cylindrical tumbling toward the edge, catching a shard of light before it disappeared. A smoke canister. The stories that vanished. Followers noticed something else. A story in their feeds at 5:49. 5 seconds of video showing 2 silhouettes by the summit cross. One in a bright striped jacket. The clip flickered, then vanished. Story scraping accounts later coughed up a backup. No faces, only profiles against dawning light. The jacket's pattern was distinctive. 3 diagonal bands like a hawk's wing. A gear shop in Botafogo remembered it. They had sold a limited run to a private guide named Gui Mendes. Not a licensed mountain guide, the shop clerk said, but he talked like he'd been on a lot of peaks. Cash only. He liked to borrow the store's demo smoke cans for fog effects. The guide. Police found Guy's social pages, thin as paper. Photos of tourists at dangerous angles, fog curling at their feet like a stage set. Captions promised exclusive sunrise experiences. No permits, no crowds, cash preferred. When questioned, he said he'd never met Mariana. He had a new phone, an old one, that fell in the sea, and he smiled politely like someone who knows you can't prove a negative. Metadata told a different story. Someone uploaded a clip from Leblon at 6:27, Renata's account, not Gui's. It didn't place Gui anywhere. It did give Mariana's friend an alibi tight enough to fit, but loose enough to wriggle. The police shrugged. The internet did not. The ledge. Rangers and volunteers mapped the summit like a crime lab. A chalk white scrape scarred the basalt 5 meters below the cross, as if something hard had tracked across the rock. A tuft of scrub held a snag of synthetic fibre, bright striped, consistent with the jacket. Waves thundered at the base of the cliffs. A fall there can erase a body in hours. That's the simple explanation, the one search teams tell themselves when they have to stop. But simple fought gravity that day. If Mariana fell at 6:32, how did no one hear it? Hikers on the lower trail reported nothing but wind. The drone clip didn't show a person. It showed motion like props in a scene, tripod, canister, and just once, a hand dipping into frame to catch the cylinder before it slid away. Did a second person knock the can and grab it? Were they signaling? The X and the edits. Mariana's ex Diego told investigators he'd sent jealous messages and regretted them. Gym entry data put him at 5:55 on a treadmill. He had nothing to gain by coming up the mountain pre-dawn and everything to lose. He cried in the car outside the station and asked reporters to leave him alone. They didn't. Renata, steely in older interviews, appeared in a new one crying for the fight, for the real, for the words, fake peaks. She had not climbed that morning, she said. She had stayed up editing. Metadata agreed. The public forgave her and then found new reasons not to. The signal. 2 months later, a tourist sent rangers a clip from that morning. At 7:05, a thin plume of smoke rose from the summit and drifted out to sea. If you believe GUI, it was a fog effect, a prop for clients. If you believe the hobbyist pilot, it looked like a signal. 3 beats, a pause, 3 beats. SOS in smoke. The video quality was poor. Arguments were high. Neither side persuaded the other. The vanishing. In the absence of a body, the case moved by rumour. Someone swore they saw Gui boarding a bus in Nitrile with a pack too heavy for an afternoon. Someone else said he'd been working boats in Angra under another name. Renata faded to Sao Paulo. Brands that once courted Mariana posted memorials that read like ad copy. Mariana's mother kept the trailhead flowers fresh. She told a reporter her daughter was braver than she had any right to be at that age. And sometimes bravery looks like caution. She would not have gone to the edge, not without checking, and checking again. The tripod leg in the rocks said a check had been made, and then broken. The scrape said metal against stone. The fibre said someone with a bright striped jacket had been where they should not. What remains? The rangers listed missing, presumed dead. That phrase is both a shield and a wound. It protects paperwork. It never heals. Years later, strangers still fall quiet at the summit cross at dawn. Some take their selfies and then step back, as if a small part of the rock remains reserved. A few touch the edge and look down like acolytes peering into a font. The ocean takes what it will. So do men who sell exclusive experiences for cash. Open your phone and scrub the drone clip yourself. Watch the small cylinder wink once in the light before it tumbles. Watch the hand reach. Decide whether it is saving a prop or calling for help. Either way, Mariana is somewhere in that frame, even if you can't see her. Mariana's last frame holds more questions than answers. A tripod, a canister, a hand, then wind. If that smoke was a signal, someone was close enough to see it. Question for you. Was this a tragic fall? A staged fog effect gone wrong? Or a second person turning a signal into silence? Who do you think wore the bright striped jacket? Up next, Case 2 takes us to Iceland. At 3:11 a.m., the audio memo captured 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, on the driver's window of a car half buried in wind-blown snow. By 3:13, the engine cut. At 3:17, the phone went still. Elin Jonsdottir was never seen again. 26, geology grad, used to long drives between glaciers and field camps. On February 2nd, she left Höfen for Egelstadir ahead of a cold front, texting her sister, "If roads close, I'll pull over and wait it out." By 2:40, Route 939 was a tunnel of spindrift. At 2:58, she called emergency services. Calm, oriented, reporting a minor slide-off and stating she'd keep the engine running for heat. Responders reached the coordinates at 3:29. The car's hazard lights were off. Battery dead. Driver's door slightly ajar, the cabin empty, keys in ignition, phone under a scarf. Footprints? None. Only wind-polished crust. A thermos still warm. A narrow handprint on the window, half melted and refrozen, overlapping Elin's own smudges. The memo begins at 3:10. Gusts, the heater fan, Elin's breath. Then a pause and her whisper. "Hey?" The 3 knocks follow, spaced, patient. She says, "Are you stuck?" Silence. The door opens, wind roars, and the memo ends. A snowplow cam recorded a faint taillight flare near 3:05, then darkness. A farmer reported a stranger trudging past his fence at dawn. Bareheaded, no pack, moving with the wind. Searchers found a scrap of navy fabric snagged on scrub 2 kilometers east. Lab tests returned no DNA. Bleached by ice, abraded by crystals. Theories split. Hypothermia confusion. A passerby who led her to shelter and never came forward. Or a second vehicle involved in a quiet roadside crime erased by weather in minutes. But a forensic acoustician noted the knocks were gloved, muted, rounded, and struck high on the glass, where a tall person would reach. Another expert countered. The resonance came through the A-pillar, perhaps snow slapping the car. The pattern was too regular for wind. On Route 939, drivers still pull over to listen when the wind drops. Locals leave a reflective vest and a thermos in the roadside box, stamped with Elin's initials. The memo's final seconds are played in training classes now. If you're stuck, stay inside, keep the doors locked. Wait for the lights you called for. The lights arrived. Elin didn't. 3 slow knocks on the glass, the engine dying, and snow polishing the world clean. No footprints, just a half-melted handprint and a thermos still warm. Question for you. Do you hear a gloved visitor in those knocks? Or just the wind playing the A-pillar? If you were Elin, would you have opened the door? Now, Case 3 leads us to Ireland. At 1:03 a.m., October 14th, a passing cyclist stopped on Blackthorn Bridge and picked up a phone lying screened down by the railing. The camera was still rolling. In the final seconds of footage, a young woman's voice whispered, "He's here." Then the image blurred into the darkness and the sound of water. Her name was Eve Kelleher, 23, a third-year marine biology student in Galway, home for the weekend in County Clare. Friends called her careful, punctual, allergic to drama. She wore a silver cladder ring and carried a canvas tote full of field notes and tie charts. On the evening of the 13th, she met 2 classmates at O'Dwyer's, a pub near the quay. Receipts show 1 cider and a bowl of chips. She left at 12:21 a.m. alone, texting her mother, "Home in 20. CCTV from Harbour Road shows her crossing at 12:28. Hood up against mist, tote on shoulder." At 12:37, a camera on Kelp Lane catches her again, glancing back over her shoulder. No one visible behind her. Her phone records a 23-second voice memo at 12:44. Wind, a breath, a clipped phrase, "Don't," followed by the scrape of fabric on stone. Blackthorn Bridge is narrow, one lane, spanning a tidal river that turns black under clouded skies. The cyclist found Oif's phone and tote bag near the midspan. Inside, student ID, house keys, a crumpled receipt, and a waterproof notebook. On the first page, a neatly drawn tide table for October 14th, with 1:06 a.m. circled in red. The river's predicted slack. Gardaí sealed the bridge by 2 a.m. A search boat ran the eddies with spotlights. Divers went in at first light. No shoes, no coat, no body. A fisherman moored upriver told officers he'd seen a car idling on the lay-by at 12:50. Dark sedan, lights off, engine low. He didn't see the plate. He didn't see anyone get in or out. As always, attention turned inward. An ex, Cian Murphy, had argued with Oif 2 weeks prior about a trip she refused to cancel. He admitted the row, denied seeing her that night. His alibi, home streaming a match, held, backed by login data. Friends said he was possessive. None could place him near the bridge. 3 women came forward to say they'd felt followed on the same stretch of road in recent months. They described a presence across the street, a shadow near hedges when they passed after midnight. One gave a detail no one else did. A clicking sound like a tongue against the roof of a mouth somewhere in the dark. She said she'd heard it twice from the mouth of the bridge. She never reported it, because that's not a thing you call the guards about. On day 3, investigators released a photo found on Oif's phone, a page from her notebook, a scrawl at the bottom margin. He doesn't like the light. Her mother said Oif used he sometimes to mean the sea itself. Her supervisor said she'd been logging nocturnal crab migrations, often using a headlamp at the bridge. The note, he said, might be literal. Light disturbs certain species, but the public read it differently. On day 5, a tip placed Oif alive in Ennis, buying a bus ticket. CCTV refuted it. Similar coat, different woman. On day 6, a local teen claimed he'd seen a figure climb the bridge railing at 1:05. He recanted after his father reminded him he'd been grounded. No midnight walks. The only physical trace beyond her belongings came from the railing. A faint print in river silt. Not a handprint exactly. A smear with 2 distinct parallel lines, like the edges of something carried across the top bar. Luminol revealed no blood. The tote strap showed fibers stressed as if pulled, not dropped. Investigators appealed for dashcam footage. One clip from 12:52 showed headlights flare on the lay-by, then cut. The outline of a vehicle, a sedan barely visible, facing the water. A minute later, 2 pinpricks of light, low to the ground, moved along the verge toward the bridge and disappeared. The cyclist who found the phone swore he'd seen no car when he arrived. Half the town believes Oif slipped or jumped. The other half whispers abduction. The tide table circle at 1:06 suggests she meant to observe the slack, not to vanish into it. Her headphones, still coiled in her pocket, argue against a sudden leap. So does the absence of splash reported by anyone within earshot. By week 2, posters papered every shop window. AOYFE come home. A candlelight vigil filled the bridge with warm light. A woman stepped forward to say she heard a voice at 12:45. A woman's. "Are you there?" And the faint, unmistakable reply of a clicking tongue. On day 9, a scarf washed up miles downstream, not hers. On day 10, searchers found a headlamp tangled in reeds beside a muddy boot print, pointing away from the water. The print was too degraded for comparison. The headlamp still worked. The official line remains missing, presumed drowned. Unofficially, locals cross Blackthorn Bridge faster now and keep their torches on high. Most say the clicking sound is just water under steel, a trick of acoustics. But on the anniversary each year at 1:06 a.m., someone leaves a fresh tide chart taped to the rail, circled in red. Ov's mother says the sea keeps its own counsel. The rest of us keep looking at the lay-by and wondering who sat there in the dark with their lights off and what they were waiting for. A phone on the railing, a tide chart circled at 1:06, and a whisper, "He's here." A sedan idling without lights. A clicking sound some say isn't wind. Question for you. Accident, abduction, or a meeting that turned? What do you make of the clicking reports? And who do you think he was? Next, Case 4 takes us to the Czech Republic. The rain came sideways off the Vltava that night, needling the windows of Kinský Gallery and turning the cobbles into river skin. At 2:11, an ATM camera across the square recorded a van with no plates idling under a dead street lamp. Inside the gallery, the alarms chirped once and died as if someone had pressed a thumb to their throat. By morning, the portrait of a lady in blue, late 18th century, small as a breath, insured at 7.5 million euros, was gone. The night guard, Marek Veverka, lay in a locked vestibule with blood in his hair and his key clip missing. The building. Kinský is a modern museum in an old shell. Parquet floors, white walls, humidity that never quite settles. The lady hung in a second-floor salon facing the river, a slip of a thing whose eyes followed you across the room and saw you better than you saw yourself. Docents told school groups about brushwork, about the way blue was once ground from lapis and cost more than gold. Security was electronic and sentimental. Doors logged every open and close. Cameras watched corners that hadn't moved in the century. Guards did rounds on the hour because that's what guards do, even when the computer says you don't need to. The guard. Marek was 52, broad and quiet, a man who carried a thermos and whistled out of tune when he was alone. He had a brother who installed security systems and a father who taught him that a key ring should feel like a weight you never forget. On the night of the heist, the ring was lighter than it should have been. He was found just inside the vestibule that led to the service stair, the door locked from the inside. The initial theory said he'd slipped and struck his head. The bruises said otherwise. A crescent above his ear consistent with a blow from something with an edge, perhaps a frame corner. Under his nails, the lab found linen fibers, not shirtcloth, but ground, fine, sized, the kind you stretch when you make a canvas sing. The override. At 1:58, the locking system recorded a single master override. The code belonged to Deputy Curator Lenka Sheda, who was at home asleep, a fact her phone and building cams confirmed. How had her authority crossed the river? The override wasn't entered at a wall panel. It came from a maintenance tablet stored in a sealed cabinet in the basement, sealed with a key that should have hung on Marek's belt. It did not. The cabinet lock showed no pry marks. Either Marek used it himself, or someone used a duplicate. When asked whether duplicates existed, the museum's head of facilities said of course not, then looked away at the window and asked if he could smoke. The van. The ATM camera gave the van shape but not number. It sat with one taillight dead and one headlamp fogged, the kind of thing you use when you want to be seen as too ordinary to notice. At 2:19, it moved across the bridge towards Smichov and folded into the city like a letter slipped into a coat. A traffic camera caught the outline again, then lost it near a carpentry shop that had changed names 3 times in 2 years. The janitor and the turpentine. A week before the theft, the night janitor says, a man came to the curator's office carrying a portfolio tube and smelling of turpentine and clove cigarettes. He waited 20 minutes. He left without being announced. The receptionist on duty remembered him only as tall, with hands like a pianist. The visitor log showed nothing. Artists come and go through museums all the time. They do not usually go through at night. Inside the frame. The lady's frame remained, hanging on its hooks like a mouth robbed of a tooth. The backing board bolts had been loosened gently. No splinters, no haste. Someone had time. Someone was not afraid. An art restorer brought in as a consultant curled her fingers in the air as if feeling ghost wood. You can take a painting out in under a minute if you don't care, she said. This took 10, 15. It took care. The restorer found 2 trace specks of lead white on the floor where they should not have been. Fresh, barely oxidized. A cleaning, she suggested. A rehearsal. The ring and the botanist. Interpol whispered about an inside ring that moved mid-tier works through Vienna and Bratislava, washing provenance in auction houses with more charm than conscience. There was talk of a collector known as the Botanist, who paid for canvases with cash and orchids no one could legally own. The nickname came from a raid years ago where paintings hung between racks of Paphiopedilum like cousins at a family reunion. No one could say whether he liked blue. In Bratislava, a warehouse yielded frames, solvents, and a stretcher matched, by dimension and tool mark, to the lady's. Dust lay in it like sleep. There was no painting. The brother. Marek's brother, Petr, installed alarms for banks and boutiques. He cried like a child at the funeral, then told a detective that his brother had called him a week before the heist to ask about the weird behavior in the museum's fail-secure doors. If you triggered an override and then killed power mid-cycle, a vestibule lock would click shut and not reopen until a manual key turned. It was a bug Peter had seen in older firmware. I told him to submit a ticket, Peter said. We laughed about computers. Then I told him, don't play with it. If someone wanted to trap a guard in a vestibule for 2 minutes, a quiet 2 minutes while a team lifted a canvas off a wall and slid it into a waiting case, that would be a way. The curator. Shada, whose code unlocked the place in the night, wept with convincing heat. She had a reputation for walking the galleries like a priest in a sacristy, hands hovering over surfaces without touching, lips moving with labels under her breath. She denied knowing any thieves. She admitted knowing artists. She laughed once, brittle. Who in Prague doesn't? A junior registrar remembered Shada receiving a plain envelope 3 days before the theft and tucking it into a book without reading. The book was about botany, a gift, the registrar thought, from a patron. Shada resigned. She moved abroad. The museum wished her well in a statement that said nothing and everything. Reconstruction. Look at it this way. 1:55. The van parks under the dead lamp. The rain drills steady. 2 people in hooded coats cross the square and disappear through a service entrance door that opens in odd hours for odd reasons. Deliveries, restorers, curators who live at work. 01:58. The override triggers. Somewhere in the basement, a silent cabinet opens without a pry. The tablet wakes. Upstairs, the vestibule begins to cycle. Marek, hearing something he can't place, steps into the small square between doors with his thermos and his heavy ring of keys. Power blips, the fail-secure bites. Marek tries the inner door, locked. He tries the outer, also locked. He curses once, loud enough to wake a camera, but cameras and vestibules tend to watch entry, not inside. No one sees his breath fog the glass. 2:01. The ladies' salon door opens with a little mechanical sigh. The frame lifts. Bolts loosen with practiced hands. The stretcher slides. Someone edges backward, carrying a canvas in front like a riot shield. Marek hears steps, or thinks he does, and pounds the glass. The man with the canvas flinches. The frame corner kisses Marek's skull, leaving a moon-shaped bruise. The thieves retreat, then return, faster now. A second person opens the vestibule door from the salon side, a crack to clear the way, pressing against the fail-secure's stubborn mouth. Marek pushes back. Nails scrabble. Linen fibers ride under them like spider silk. The door slams. The vestibule holds. Marek slides to the tile. The thieves carry the lady down the service stair. 2:11. The alarms chirp once, as if in protest, and go quiet. Across the square, the van's brake lights bloom like petals. The rain approves of everything. 2:19. The van floats into Smíchov and dissolves into streets that know how to shave off memories. Aftermath. Prague told itself a familiar story. Art wants to be free and people want money, and sometimes those desires meet in a night of rain. The lady in blue did not come back. In her place, the gallery hung an empty frame. Children craned to peer into it, as if a very small person might be hiding inside. Each November, the museum hosts a talk about provenance. The slides show stamps and invoices and the tender ways paperwork lies. In the gift shop, a postcard of the lady remains for sale. Tourists buy it and put it in their pockets next to receipts and coins, and for a moment the painting is theirs. As for Marek, the vestibule has been modernized and the firmware updated. His name lives on a small brass plate by the staff entrance. His brother changed careers. He installs windows now. Glass tells the truth, he says. And then, because Prague is a city of mirrors, he smiles and corrects himself. At least you know where it is. If the Botanist exists, he waters his orchids in a room with no pictures on the walls, because some luxuries are too loud. If Sheda knows more than she said, she keeps it as priests keep taxonomies of sin, in order, in silence. Somewhere there is a canvas breathing in private air. Somewhere there is a frame that remembers the weight it held. On rainy nights, you can stand on the bridge and watch the gallery's lights sapphire the river. The empty frame on the second floor catches nothing but reflection. It is not the same, and yet for a second, the city looks like a painting, which is another way of saying the painting is still here, only everywhere and untouchable, just as the thieves wanted, just as the rest of us feared. An override from a sealed tablet, a van without plates, linen fibers under a guard's nails, and an empty frame glowing like a missing tooth. Question for you. Was this a pure inside job, a professional ring using a borrowed key, or both? If the Botanist is real, where do you think the lady in blue hangs now? Finally, Case 5 brings us to Tokyo. They teach you that fires have signatures. The way flames lick upward from a point of origin, the way smoke settles into walls like bruises. At 12:11 a.m., May 9th, the alarm at Sakura Steps Hostel chirped once, hesitated, and only on the second punch of the panel did it begin to scream. By 12:20, 3 floors were smoke-sealed. By dawn, 5 people were dead. A 6-bed, rented by a 21-year-old American student named Eva Moran, was neatly made, the sheets missing, the window cracked an inch, as if to taste the night. Shinjuku does not stop for tragedy. The trains kept coming, the ramen steam drifted over Yasukunidori, and the neon wrote its looping arguments against the dark. But for a week, the alley behind the hostel smelled of solvent. Firefighters said that was imagination. People who lived there disagreed. The hostel. Sakura Steps occupied an old office shell, 4 floors of fiberboard partitions, metal bunk frames, a lobby desk with travel brochures in 6 languages. The book said cash preferred. The security cameras were supposed to copy to a cupboard DVR. On the morning after the fire, that cupboard gaped empty. A handwritten ledger remained, lines ripped out in 2 places. The night clerk, a graduate student named Miho, told investigators she'd punched the alarm panel at 12:11 when she smelled hot plastic. The siren didn't catch. She punched again. After that, she said, it was all smoke. The missing guest. Eva's bunk, 2nd floor, room 204, bed C, was registered for 3 nights. She had arrived with a camera case, a backpack, and a notebook filled with typed specimens, photographs of street signs, hand-painted menus, bus placards. She was in Tokyo for a typography project that never made it back to her professor in Minnesota. Her friends said she had a way of finding the quiet, odd corners of cities and making them feel like secrets held just for you. Her phone pinged at 12:16 near Shinokubo Station, 3 blocks away. Then it died. That was the last the phone ever said. 2 fires. The Tokyo Fire Department drew its map with arrows, a stairwell trash can on the 1st floor, soaked in accelerant, an electrical closet on the 2nd that, according to city records, should have been locked out months before renovation. Dual origin, the report read. Human agency likely. Investigators found the trash can kicked, dented inward as if someone had tried to stamp out the flames. The closet's knob showed pry marks. The breaker levers had been taped into position with cloth athletic tape, the kind you buy at any pharmacy. Across the alley, a vending machine camera facing the service door caught 18 seconds at 12:07. A figure under a red umbrella, shoulders hunched, leaving with a quick, purposeful gait. The figure didn't look back. The timestamp had synced to the hostel's panel, off by a minute, give or take, but close enough to make a picture. Someone left before the sirens cried. The manager. The hostel's manager, Kenji Oka, mid-40s, thin and nasal, with a habit of pinching the bridge of his nose when he spoke, was due to meet police at 9 a.m. He never arrived. His bank card never pinged a commuter gate again. His lease went unpaid. His phone disconnected. His staff, to a person, called him careful and cheap, and one added scared of the wrong people, then refused to elaborate. A downstairs restaurant owner, who asked that we not use his name, said he'd seen Oka arguing with two men in the alley a week before the fire. Suits, he said, but not office suits. He mimed a tiny bow that ended hard, like a door shutting. The guest list. Of the 5 who died, 2 were long-term residents who'd paid cash for bunks while looking for work. 1 was a backpacker whose parents couldn't afford to fly his body home. The last 2 were a couple on a visa run, in Japan for exactly 48 hours, who had booked the cheapest beds they could before catching a morning flight to Taiwan. None had any link to Eva beyond proximity. Her bed told a different story. The mattress was cool to the touch when firefighters reached it. The sheets were missing. The window was cracked open by exactly 1 click of a stiff latch. On the sill, a soot print. Something square had rested there, then been lifted away. The lab said the residue carried a trace of plasticizer used in cheap camera cases. In a drain behind the building, crews found a blackened SD card in melted plastic. The city's forensic lab teased a single surviving file out of its shocked memory. A photo of a stairwell door slightly ajar, a hand in a black nitrile glove holding it. The timestamp read 12:05. The umbrella. It took a month for the red umbrella to resurface, sold for a handful of coins to a thrift shop in Suginami. The clerk remembered the seller, a man with a healed burn scar peeking from under his cuff. He had no receipt. He wanted cash. He joked that rainy season would make the umbrella priceless. The clerk laughed then. She doesn't now. There were no fingerprints. The fabric gave nothing. If the umbrella was the same, it had been handled by hands careful enough to leave no history. The pain of maybe. By the 3rd day after the fire, the alley was a campsite of grief. Friends brought flowers. Strangers brought convenience store coffee. The father of the backpacker who died sat on a plastic milk crate and told anyone who would listen about his son's first bicycle. He had chosen the hostel because the website showed a bookshelf in the lobby. He loved books, the father said. He would have liked that. Eva's parents arrived on the 4th day, Midwestern polite, eyes shattered, clinging to one idea like an axle, that their daughter had left the building before the worst. They asked to see the Shinokubo footage of their daughter alive in the city, even if only as a moving dot on a cell tower map. The detectives said they would try. They used the word maybe so gently, it sounded like mercy. Theories. 3 theories fought in the precinct and online. The debt fire. Okay, harassed by creditors or worse, staged a small blaze to trigger an insurance claim and let it run. He fled under a red umbrella and took the hard drives with him. But Oka was not a man who liked chances. It begged belief that he'd risk 5 lives for a payout that might never clear. The protection fire. Someone higher up the food chain punished a missed payment with a warning wrapped in flame. It would explain why a closet, with no business being live, lit up as if waiting for a signal. It might also explain a manager's vanishing. It explained nothing about Eva, the witness. Eva saw something. Cash changing hands, a door where there shouldn't be one, a face that wanted not to be seen, and someone removed her. The 2nd floor window led to a rusted fire escape that emptied into the service alley. No camera, covered the angle you'd need to see a small person slip out and down. People in the hall. 2 surviving guests told a story that refused to settle. They had returned from Golden Guy at 11:40, weaving and giddy, and paused in the hallway to take a selfie in front of a mural. In the reflection of the glass, they noticed a third figure behind them, tall, head down, passing without shoes. One swore the man wore gloves. Their memory is dirty with smoke and fear, but the detail harmonizes with the nitrile glove in the photograph. Miho, the clerk, remembered something else. A door on the ground floor propped with a rolled towel an hour before the fire. She kicked it free, scolded a guest for leaving it, and kept moving. In the footage that didn't survive, perhaps you could have watched that towel roll forward again. Perhaps someone picked it up. Shinokubo. If Eva walked to Shinokubo station at 12:16, she had barely 8 minutes to get out of the building, cross a block and a half, and pass into a cellular shadow where prepaid phones and old handsets disappear into the static of millions. Street cameras along the way yielded nothing usable. One convenience store camera captured a flashlight beam skittering across the sidewalk at 12:13, then cutting away. On the edge of the frame, briefly, a red canopy bobbed in rain mist. Her friends traced her favorite routes, the sign paint shops, the alley with the blue graffiti script, the bakery whose window lettering she'd photographed because the R curls like a cattail. In her notebook, on the page before the night of the fire, she had written a list. Shinjuku Sanchome, pillar posters, torn edges. Shinokubo, plastic menu letters, faded. Alley, behind Sakura Steps. Stencil, service only, crooked. That last one matters only because the stencil was new. Someone had painted it the week before. The paint was still tacky to the touch. The man under the tracks. Weeks later, the police chased a rumor down to the Cho line, where a commuter said a man who looked like Oka slept under a bridge with a community of others who had left their names behind. By the time officers got there, municipal bulldozers had cleaned the encampment. Shoelaces and a single slipper lay in a flattened square where a bed had been. The city apologized for the timing. The apology sounded like a cough. A stringer photographer found a woman willing to talk. She said a man with a scar on his wrist had come through days before, asking for cheap gloves. What the fire said. Fires leave fingerprints, but they also erase. The lab mapped heat vectors, smoke stain heights, char patterns. The trash can's rim had a lip of melted plastic that suggested a pour, not a toss. The closet's live wires had been rigged into a loop that would re-energize when a door closed. Someone's idea of a clever trick. The most stubborn fact remained the simplest. Ava's bed was cold, and the window had tasted the night. Her SD card showed a gloved hand holding a door. Her phone died near Shinokubo at 12:16. Beyond that, the city swallowed her. After. The hostel changed its name. New lights, new drywall, a framed certificate promising everything was up to code. Tourists came back. The alley grew new smells. In May each year, Ava's parents fly in anyway. They stand at the corner where the umbrella was last seen, and they talk to the air. On a message board where night shift clerks trade advice about drunks and bedbugs and people who won't stop asking for a quiet room. Someone wrote, "If the alarm doesn't scream when you hit it again." Someone else added, "And if a girl with a camera says the door was open, when it should be shut, believe her. There are things the fire could not tell us. What the person under the umbrella felt leaving, whether Oka knew which of his choices had caught flame, whether Eva ran for help or ran from it. The vending machine camera shows the red canopy bobbing and then gone. The drain held onto a memory long enough to spit up a single picture of a gloved hand in a doorway. The city has moved on, as cities must. The alley remembers different. When it rains, people who live there still swear the scent of solvent returns. 2 fires, an empty DVR, a red umbrella slipping into rain, and a single photo of a gloved hand on a door. Eva's bed was cold. The window tasted the night. Question for you. Which theory fits best? Det fire, protection fire, or witness removed? Do you think Eva made it out that window? And if so, who met her in the alley? Take a breath. Which case unsettled you most and why? Share your theory in the comments.
Case closed. Archived in the synthetic vault. If you dare to return, the next file awaits. truecrime.exe. The line between fiction and fear.